So I wanted to do this video because a lot of times when we talk about the formula and money machine and mixing entrepreneurship with engineering, it comes off like it's just some little program you can use as an after school program, but it doesn't. I have never really explicitly spoke about how we can affect test scores and increase math scores and writing scores and emotional intelligence, because I've been so busy talking about engagement and behavioral modification and emotional intelligence. So I want to use this presentation to speak specifically to test scores. So academically, the areas that we can really make improvements is math. Obviously, this is called the formula. In the literacy area, we do really well as the students write a fully blown business plan. They write memos. It's very intensive on writing. There's like 300 vocabulary words from a financial literacy perspective that they have to learn. We do very good with engagement, because we're telling the kids they're going to make a money machine. And from an emotional intelligence perspective, we do really well there because as an entrepreneur, you have to be in control of your emotions. We teach them what emotion is, which is very important. And we do all this by, mixing entrepreneurship with engineering. And it is definitely interdisciplinary. You can implement it in your history class. It can go into a science or math class. You can literally replace a science or math class elective using this. You can use it in the after school program or as a summer camp. It's history. Entrepreneurs are big history buffs, and everything that takes place in the world of entrepreneurship stems from current events, which is history or current events. So this is something that touches all areas. Very, very, very intensive writing and very, very intensive math. And we're telling the kids, we're not telling them it's engineering. Remember, we're teaching them to make a money machine. So I just want to be clear that academically, because this is very rigorous, if your kids can write a fully blown business plan, that is a feat. All right. There are people who get paid thousands of dollars just to do that. I can't tell you how many times schools have hired me that have had virtual enterprise in their schools. And because they don't have the tools that I'm about to show you, the kids in the final hour, black children in their final hour can't even compete because they don't know what the business plan consists of. So that's something that we do really well. So we can literally come in and we've done this before in a few weeks and get the kids to write a fully blown business plan, right? Where virtual enterprise, they tell you what the components are, but they don't explain how it all fits together in a system. And if you do that, if you think that those kids are going to be able to write a business plan without explaining it from a systematic perspective, you're delusional. And that's why black and brown children are never winning in those virtual enterprise contests. They just don't. So in my opinion, this is academic and engagement utopia. And I'm going to try to prove to you why that is right now. Okay, now this is the secret sauce. These are engineering instruments that I invented that will give your students the ability to make the disruptive innovation and the unicorn company. These are also the 4 hemispheres of all disciplines of engineering, which I'm not going to go into because whenever I go into it a little too much, teachers that watch this will say, oh, I can just reverse engineer this myself and I don't need Mr. Powell to do this. And that's actually happened. One district, I showed this to them. They ranted and raved about it and then tried to implement it unsuccessfully, I may add, throughout their entire district. Right. So I'm always apprehensive to show this to people because I realize that sometimes showing this to teachers, I'm not showing this to teachers who are my customers. I'm showing it to teachers who sometimes believe that they're my competitors. But these throughout all disciplines of engineering, whether mechanical, electrical, civil, biomedical, all of them, they will all have these 4 elements. Right. And if you look in the Next Generation Science Teaching Standards, if you read it, which I have done, it talks about modeling and relaying models to logic and math and units of measure. And as you can see here, I have given you 4 tools to create what they call disruptive innovations and unicorns, which are the highest form of technological success in all the world. So the other programs that I'm competing with, they may give you a model already made, but they're not going to tell you explicitly how to take models and make a disruptor. They're not. They're just going to give you the model and let you play with the model. But they're not going to explain to you how to invent and use models to create disruptors. None of them do. They don't even know what disruptors are. I hate to be so critical of the competition, but people see me as some, black man, and they think that, oh, he's just got some little program. It doesn't have any academic teeth. I remember this one assistant principal, when I showed her the book, she looked at me and said, there's not enough in this for me to teach an entire year. And in my mind, I was like, oh, really? Is that so? And that's why I started creating the curriculum, because I wanted to show people, because she said this right to my face. She was an assistant principal at Boys and Girls High School. I never forget it. I was insulted, but I sat there steaming, and I didn't say anything to her. Obviously, she didn't do business with me. She blew me off, but little did she know that all of this was in it. So this is real engineering. This is not just giving you like a robot as a model and then you play with a robot. This is teaching you what models are and how to use math and logic and units of measure to create disruptors. I'm the only one doing this. So the formula here that you see at the top is a linear mathematical equation. It is the basis of engineering. A linear mathematical algebraic equation is the best predictor of future success in other mathematical operations like calculus and statistics and trigonometry. It's all in the Common Core. So if your students can, in high school, high school and junior high school, solve a linear mathematical equation, they are set up to go to college and be able to deal with probably the basis of engineering, because when I was at Northeastern, they just drilled us on 2-page linear mathematical equations. It was just a nightmare. They just threw these formulas at us all day and all night. And what else I want to say is that most important, the turning point academically for me in college is when I left one of my engineering classes and chased some girl into a business class and saw that the linear mathematical equations that my engineering professors were using to figure out how fast electricity would flow through a circuit, they were using to figure out the same type of equation, just different variables and numbers, to figure out how fast the economy would go into recession or something like that. And that was the turning point for me academically. Once I saw that, I knew that these colleges, even Northeastern, were holding back information and not really showing us how powerful math was. And that's when I started to get straight A's. That was the turning point. Had I not skipped out of class chasing this girl, I would have never seen this. And your students will never know it. So this formula that you see at the top, from an engagement perspective, turns into money equals value over time, right? Just like in mechanical engineering, power equals work over time, or speed equals distance over time. This is the same thing, and this is my formula. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's clear. I invented this formula for money based on this linear mathematical equation. Okay, so once the kids find out that this formula is really a speedometer for how fast the money machine is going to produce money, they will do anything from an engagement perspective to fight with the math until they get it right. There's no other engineering program on the market right now that can do that can engage your kids. All they're going to do is throw formulas at your kids that your kids don't even understand what the value is, what it is, and they're just going to go through they're going to basically hopscotch through the formulas, but they'll never understand the meaning of the formula. That's why this is so important. That's why it's so valuable. That's why the kids love it, because they can see it not only mathematically but visually when they understand what the model is, which we talked about earlier. So when you talk about math, and all throughout the Common Core, all throughout the next generation science teaching standards, they are trying to get people to understand that linear algebra is the basis of success in math across all mathematical disciplines. And here we have one for calculating money. Now, this is very important. This is our model. This model, I'm not going to tell you what the different elements are, but basically the model is the framework of a fully blown company. It's like the the elements of a company, as well as the elements of a successful financial transaction, right? And in that, because you know the elements of a successful financial transaction or a company, you can write a business plan. Just like looking at hydrogen and oxygen as a risk-free model for manufacturing water. Our model is a risk-free model for the successful manufacturing of a financial transaction or a company. And in that, once we install all these vocabulary words in the different elements, which I am purposefully not going to explain what those are right now, your students can write a business plan in evidence. And the Common Core and the Next Generation Science Teaching Standards speak specifically to the importance of modeling and how, but they don't, they explain it individually, but they don't connect all of the dots. They don't give you all of they don't give you a model. They don't explain that having a model that has a mathematical interpretation to it with units of measure and logic is how you create a disruptive innovation and a unicorn. Every technology, whether it's cryptocurrency or robotics or computer programming, any technology has modeling in it. They'll literally say it, right? So the people who wrote the Next Generation Science Teaching Standards and the Common Core are not engineers, or maybe they are, but they do know the importance of modeling in every genre of education. As I'm sure if there are any doctors or principals watching this, they understand why modeling is important. Modeling is the answers. This model, the more models and formulas you have, the more valuable your education. But from your perspective as a teacher or as a principal, what you need to know is that once the students start looking at anything as a model, whether it's a resume or a memo or a business plan or a report that they have to do, and once they start to understand that all models have different elements, like the Model T, which is a car, then they can hopscotch in and out of any writing assignment quickly and get it done. They're not just looking at the individual parts, they're looking at it holistically, system-wide, control systems. These are the classes that I took, and this is why modeling is so important. And this is how we can teach students to write a business plan. Nobody else has this. Nobody else can do this, and nobody else, and if they do have a little bit of modeling, they definitely don't have a model that's going to create a successful financial transaction or a money machine. They don't have a formula to engage students to show them how they can use models to make manufacture money. They don't have this, all right? So, I mean, when I call schools and they say, yeah, we're already doing something like this, no, you're not. I don't mean to be crass, but you're not doing something like this. You may think you are, but you're not. So from a writing perspective, this is how we can teach the kids to write so quickly. And when you start giving the vocabulary words and they start putting it inside the different elements, it gives them context. So they not only can write the business plan, they can explain it, they understand it. Virtual Enterprise doesn't have this. Nifty doesn't have this. What's the other one? Project Lead the Way definitely doesn't have this. They know that the schools have a lab culture, so they're selling you lab equipment, but your kids don't know what it is. And just quickly to demonstrate the power of models, as soon as the kids understand what the model is made of, the elements, then they can start creating business models, and they can start pulling companies apart like someone in private equity, because they understand the structure of a model, regardless of what the company is, whether it's Morgan Stanley or Walmart or TJ Maxx or whatever. Whether it's a commercial or a business model, they can pull it apart and they can track it. They can track how fast this model or this money machine produces money, because they have a formula, as you see right here, which is actually a speedometer for how fast the model produces its money, or its output, as engineers like to call it. So again, none of my competitors are explaining it on this level because they're not real engineers, and they don't know what it is. I mean, I don't mean to badmouth the competition because it's in poor taste, but I have to, because people keep telling me you don't have this and we have some other company. Meanwhile, black and brown children are dead last in the STEM related fields of study. So obviously, respectfully, what you have is not working. And I'm speaking specifically to Virtual Enterprise. All right, they don't know what modeling is, and they just looked on the internet and found some elements of a business plan, and because they think they can pull the wool over your eyes and just sell you something because, I don't know, they're a white company, and they think that, and nobody trusts that because we're not as big of a company as them, and we're run by, where our CEO is black, myself, that we couldn't possibly have something more powerful academically than Virtual Enterprise. But it is unfortunately the other way around. Now, this is another one of the tools, the engineering instruments that I have invented, so to speak. I didn't really invent this. I just put it in a visual matrix, which is very common in engineering. And these are basically, this is the sum total of the world economy. As crazy as this sounds and as fantastical as it sounds, if you were in the class, when I explain this, the kids realize that it's actually true. And these are called pain points in the world of sales. And if you watch the Bloomberg channel or watch any financial business channel on the investment side, not the financial literacy that you guys think, that teachers think is, balancing your checkbook. That's what an accountant does. Financial literacy is about understanding valuations and how to grow money, like the greatest value investor in the history of the stock market, Warren Buffett. This is the basis of it. This is also what we use to create emotional intelligence within the students, to get them to understand their emotions and what they're going through, and to get them to understand how to create, identify, and sell value. And there's a whole host of things here that we can do, but this is the basis of the entire program. And let me say that if you have an entrepreneurial program and you don't understand academically what value is, which these 4 quadrants here explain explicitly, then how on God's green earth are you going to expect students to create it, identify it, and then sell it, articulate it? It's just impossible. So the only reason I found this out was because as a sales engineer, which I was for 30 years for companies like AT&T and Sprint, I worked for all of these top tech firms. I was the sales engineer, me, the black guy who people have typecast as not as smart, because I can only suppose, and I don't mean to make you guys uncomfortable, but because that's just the stereotype with black men. But I was the one that the salespeople would take out to sell the technology, and they trained us on this. And this is the foundation of everything. If your kids don't understand what emotions are, how are they going to control their own emotions? And incidentally, we teach them that the thing that salespeople prey on to get you to buy their products quickest are your emotions. So once your kids understand this and they understand emotional intelligence, then they're going to realize that their value is not inflicting pain on each other, which is what you, ladies and gentlemen, have to chase them through the halls doing every day, because right now that's what the media is telling them to do, to inflict pain on each other, to hurt each other. Rap music and boxing and violence, everything is trying to teach your kids to hurt each other. Once we show them that the people who make the real big bucks are doing the exact opposite, then they have a reason to change. And until you do that, I hate to say this because I was a pretty bad kid. I was the kid that was voted most likely to go to jail. If I didn't go to Northeastern, I'd probably be in jail or dead right now. Until you do this, until you show them that the keys to success is not inflicting pain on each other, but creating products to cure pain for each other, you will continue to run through the halls and chase kids and stop fights, as happens every day when I'm calling APs and they're talking to me and they're like, oh God, there's a fight in the hall, I got to run out. It's because they don't understand this. Nothing will ever change until you get them to understand, your students rather, I don't mean to refer to them as them, your students, that everything they want is dependent upon their understanding of this. And once we do explain that, then violent incidents start to go down. and I mean, I hope that we get a chance to show you what this is. But when I tell people what this is, again, they think that because I'm not a teacher that they can do it on their own. And I just want to say one more thing quickly. As I said before, I was a salesperson, and salespeople are essentially teachers. They have to educate their customers as to how they can do something today that they couldn't do prior using their product. So the best salespeople, which I'm not the best, but any salesperson worth their salt that's making millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, they are excellent teachers. So this is another one of our proprietary engineering instruments. It's called a logic statement. This is a logic statement that I invented. It's basically a nursery rhyme that students can use to reverse engineer the innovations of any great entrepreneur that's created anything, from the iPhone to the wheel to the car to the earmuffs to the cell phone. This logic statement, which consists of both the mentality of the scientist and the engineer, and you can use it to basically reverse engineer other products so that the students can So sometimes I like to joke around and say we have the technology, we can rebuild them, because as you can see, this is the thought, this instead of what if logic statement that, again, I invented, not to be crass, I invented this. They could use to reverse engineer all of the disruptive innovations like WhatsApp and TikTok and Instagram. They can understand what the scientist does and what the engineer does and how they both work together. But most importantly, they can use it to invent new products and invent or reinvent themselves. So I always like to joke around and say, with this logic statement, we have the technology to rebuild all of them. So for all of the folks that think that I don't, that have said to me I don't understand the difference between STEM and STEAM, I just want you folks to know that I've written 2 books, which and I don't mean, I'm trying to basically legitimize myself here. And I studied jazz guitar since I was 7 years old. I've played with, I played in the jazz band at Northeast University. I had my own sextet and used to play at the Blue Note, and I had my own jazz band. So back in the 80s, when I was going to school, it was very in style for engineers to study jazz guitar or jazz music, and that was very popular. So I was one of those people. My mother, and the point I'm trying to make here is that going to Northeastern, the miseducation of black children is something that is very real to me, because even though I studied jazz guitar my whole life, I didn't know that black people invented jazz until I went to Northeastern, and there was the Berklee School of Music right around the corner, and I go into some jazz bar and find out that Miles Davis is the only musician in the history of the world. Literally, I don't know anybody, Beethoven or anybody, who's invented 5 different genres of music. All right. James Brown isn't the father of rap music. It's Miles Davis with a song called So What, right? So when people say that, when some teachers and say, hey, we don't do STEM here, we do STEAM, like they're looking, sort of looking down their nose at me, and I don't understand that. What they don't realize is that I do know a little bit about STEAM and the difference between STEAM and STEM. My mother was an impressionist artist. She was a painter, right? And again, with the miseducation of black children, I went to these unfortunately white jazz instructors, Billy Bauer, who was Charlie Parker and Miles Davis rhythm guitar player, who would string me along and not even teach me the blues. It wasn't until I went to Northeastern and figured it out that I had to realize that he was taking me for a ride. The same thing that Northeastern did, not teaching me about disruptive innovations. So one of the things that I would urge you folks to take into consideration is that I have a certain cultural currency with your students if they're black and brown, and that I don't believe any white institution is going to teach black children to be better than white kids. I'm 55 years old. I'm just saying it. I'm saying that I don't think based on what happened to me, what white art schools did to my mother, stringing her along, they're there to make money and to make sure that the kids come back and pay their tuition. They're not here to teach black children to be better than white kids and to be dominant in the corporate world or after college and career. That's not what they're there to do. They're there to take black children's money and essentially give them nothing, which is what they did to me. Northeastern did it. The schools are not teaching black, brown children how to defend themselves in the corporate world. And with this program, we can do both. Right? The formula, the logic statement that I showed you folks, I discovered playing jazz guitar. And I write about it in the book. In the actual audio book that your students would listen to, if we were fortunate enough to work together, they would hear the whole story of how I discovered this formula. So I can do STEAM. STEAM is interwoven. Art is a big part of this book. There are stories about me playing the guitar in the book. And again, I'm a black man. So when I walk into the class and all of the support staff that I hire, whether it's a young lady who writes for USA Today magazine and interviews celebrities to help with the writing skills of your students, she's a black girl. So we have a certain cultural currency with your students that Project Lead the Way, that Nifty or Virtual Enterprise do not have. So I just wanted to address that's who I am, and that's our position, our cultural position, I believe, is superior to our competitors. So again, this is about the top of the technological food chain and getting black and brown children or people to compete at the highest possible level with the Jim Bezoses and the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs or the Bill Gateses, as fantastical as that sounds. And the reason why these gentlemen are the titans of technology is because they're focused on creating two things: the top of the technological food chain, a disruptive innovation, and a unicorn company, which is the focus of our program here, the formula. And robotics won't be able to accomplish all the things that we've discussed here. Artificial intelligence won't be able to give your kids the tools to conceptualize things like cryptocurrency or artificial intelligence, which is incidentally heading straight for the black community, and people say is going to decimate the black community. So robotics is not going to give your students better writing skills. It's not going to improve their math scores. It's not going to improve their emotional intelligence. It's only, if it does engage them, it's only going to engage 3% of your kids in your school. This is why black and brown children are dead last in the technology race. Entrepreneurship mixed with STEM is the only way to do it. You have to point them at the top of the technological pyramid and give them the tools to shoot for that and push them to do it. So what I'm saying is that we instead of just us, as I've been explaining it, just talking about preparing them for success in the real world, which is my focus, I'm saying, and I haven't said it explicitly until now, that we can prepare them for success on your playing field, which is test scores, and for success in career, which is my playing field, which is to create disruptive innovation and unicorn companies. We can do both. And I'm hopeful that you will give me an opportunity to do this at a very, very, very affordable price point.